What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Fully Inflated Football Podcast. I'm your host, Marcus Whitman, recording this here kind of late here on a Saturday night, which is kind of fun because most people aren't out here making football content in the middle of the weekend. So dial this thing up late night Saturday, maybe playing some Apex Legends. Love that game. Or load this up Sunday when you're watching the Combine. We got a very full show here. But I want to try and keep it a little quicker just because I do have my hands full with a lot of stuff. The Combine, obviously, a lot of work to be done here. People asking about draft classes, where I got people, Madden, all this stuff. Got my hands very full, so trying to do my best there. A reminder, guys, if you are shopping for tickets for concerts or sporting events, maybe you're going to an AAF game, you happen to be in a city that has those or something, use SeatGeek. It's the best place to get the best tickets, the best prices. Use promo code ThatFranchiseGuy. You'll save $20 on your first purchase. So for the show today, we're going to talk about 3 standouts and 3 kind of busts from the Combine. Then we're going to have a little fun here, talk about my top 10 quarterbacks in 2019, which is going to be kind of not necessarily where I have them right now based on how they played last year, but sort of like who I think is going to be the best quarterbacks in next season. And when we're at this time next year, maybe where will we rank the top 10, So a little different perspective there. This isn't necessarily my top 10 list right now, just trying to project forward a little bit. And then we're going to continue fixing teams by division. We'll get into the AFC West to finish up the AFC today, and then we'll get into the mailbag. I think we have a pretty full list of questions there from Twitter. So let's not waste any more time. Let's get into it here. Talk a little bit about the Combine, which is one of my favorite times of the year. Start to see these players kind of really all next to each other. Basically, what I like to see is just to see how they move, see what they look like. The scores are important, but you don't necessarily have to watch to see the scores. And then obviously film is going to be more important than any of this stuff. But you do get players who will shoot up, shoot down based off of either out of nowhere performances at the Combine, showing athletic traits that you didn't think guys had, or vice versa, where you think a guy's more athletic than he is, and he comes out and just looks slow and tests poorly. So let's start with 3 guys that really helped themselves here. And I'm assuming some of these questions are going to show back up at the end of the show. But starting with the 3 standouts, I got 2 wide receivers here. Number 1 is Paris Campbell. And Paris Campbell's been kind of on my sleeper radar now. He's a wide receiver out of Ohio State. He's a projected late first to a second round wide receiver. Now, he was fast on film. You didn't always see it because it was a lot of stuff in the screen game. He wasn't used a ton as a deep threat. Really used as a slot guy, a catch-and-run guy, kind of an oversized Curtis Samuel. Now, it's no secret on this channel, I really am not a Curtis Samuel guy at all because I didn't think he could catch coming out. I don't think he could run routes. Now, with Paris Campbell, granted, we didn't see a ton of it, but I thought when he was asked to do those things, like run routes and catch the ball, he actually graded out much better as an actual wide receiver. So you're kind of projecting a skill set there with Paris Campbell. Now, when he comes out the Combine and runs a 4.32, and he's 6'1", 205, like this is a big body dude. That's the other thing, is Curtis Samuel was like a undersized running back almost. Paris Campbell is a full-grown wide receiver. So you are projecting here, you're hoping he can get coached up, but you pair that size with that athleticism and a guy that I thought showed a lot of great flashes, frankly, before DK Metcalf got on in Group 2 and worked out, I was raving that Paris Campbell was right there now with Riley Ridley for my number 1 wide receiver in the class. So I do think Paris Campbell with a 4.3 140 pushed himself pretty surely into the first round. And there was kind of a little reminder, too, about Michael Thomas, who granted is a totally different receiver. I had a first-round grade on Michael Thomas. He fell into the second round, and turns out that other Ohio State product turned out to be a decent player. So really liking Paris Campbell. Right now, he's going to come in as my 3rd wide receiver on my board. And for my Patreons out there that are getting my draft board, I am pushing to get a combine update to that thing out to you guys midweek next week. I have a ton of new information to put into uploading that thing. I've only just begun to scratch the surface of what this combine is teaching us. So Paris Campbell on his way up. And then DK Metcalf, we just mentioned him, but he's going to be my second standout. He started catching eyes when he posted that pic of him at the gym, looking like Thor. And he comes out, he jumps well, he runs a 4.32, and now he's Julio Jones. The hype on DK Metcalf is uncontrollable. I honestly can't remember a player just off of physical attributes boosting himself quite as much as DK Metcalf, and I think most of it is justified. A guy that big running that fast, I was talking to a friend before he ran, he could have ran anywhere from 4.7 to a 4.38, and I would have believed it. I would not have guessed he could run 4.33. Like, that is just ridiculous. Now, he is stiff. People are going to compare him to Julio Jones. He has similarities to Julio Jones, and I like his tape as well. He's not just a physical freak, and clearly my number one wide receiver now. I would probably say he's a top 15 pick. He might get pushed in the top 5. That's a pretty crazy rise for him. But I don't necessarily think he's going to be as a refined route runner as like Julio Jones was coming out. But you cannot just pass on that type of athleticism, and you put this guy in the right situation. I don't even know if he needs the right situation, but this guy is going to be a handful at the next level, and the hype train just cannot be contained. So DK Metcalf obviously helped his stock today, was kind of the narrative on draft Twitter today. And then the third guy here, a little more under the radar. I actually didn't even have this guy on my draft board yet. I probably would have gotten to him eventually, but Miles Sanders out of Penn State, the Saquon Barkley filler. And then I had to go back and watch some of his tape after he comes out and basically lights up every drill. He jumps well. I think he had a 40-inch vertical. I could be wrong. Maybe 35, something like that. But he benched well. His agility scores, the 3-cone was like 6'8" something, which is very good for a running back specifically. And then he runs a 4.49. So you dial up his tape, and frankly, I think he might be the shiftiest back in this entire class. Really good jump cut, just like one Saquon Barkley. Clearly learned some things as far as the technique on that jump cut goes. This guy at 5'11", 215. I'm sorry I didn't write down the numbers before I recorded this, so he might actually be 211. But he carries a lot of weight in his legs, which is a huge thing for running backs for me. You don't necessarily have to be that 220 pounds if you can show that you carry weight in your legs, which allows for really good balance. And then you combine it with a good jump cut like Miles Sanders has. I do think Sanders now, considering Darrell Henderson, is probably going to creep up to the early second round. If you want to talk about finding that next Kareem Hunt, Alvin Kamara, that third-round pick at running back that just becomes an all-pro type of player, Sanders, I think, has the physical profile to do that. And his 1 year as a starter, it's a good thing for me if you don't have a lot of tread on your tires for running back. That's a big reason I like Josh Jacobs as well. So he starts 1 year at Penn State, produced very well, over 1,000 yards, but the tape was real nice. Now, he might be a little raw. He fumbled 5 times, maybe a little bit of that Saquon type mentality where he tried to hit a home run on every play, whereas sometimes you'd like to see him just get the scrappier yards, but he does also have power. He's not just a shifty dude. So I really like Miles Sanders. I actually have Alvin Kamara in there as my comp for him because I do think that's the ceiling for Miles Sanders. Obviously, everything has to go right for that to happen, but I do think it could be the type of player we're looking at here and could be one of the biggest steals in this entire class, who has totally come out of nowhere. And then let's talk about 3 players that really shot their draft stock down here. We got another wide receiver here, Lil Jordan Humphrey. Best name in the class for sure, but he comes out and runs, correct me if I'm wrong, I was doing a little spring cleaning as the combine was on, but I did see 4.80, for Lil Jordan Humphrey. This is a player who reminds you a little bit of like a taller Cordarrelle Patterson on film. And again, you don't want to just completely overreact to a 40 time. I did think Lil Jordan Humphrey had pretty good speed on tape. So, you would think just because his 40 time is bad, he's not necessarily super slow. But he is a bigger guy, and when you're that big and you can't run, it's definitely a concern. I currently had a second to a third round grade on Humphrey. He's good at catching the ball in traffic, which is the difference between him and Cordarrelle. Really physical guy after the catch, but an underclassman here comes out and runs a 4.79. Definitely not helping his stock there. I think he may have flushed himself into day 3 with that 40 time alone. A fine player, but you're definitely going to question the upside there of anything more than a jump ball guy there. Maybe someone that could convert to tight end. And then the other guy that just really sucked it up was a guy that I had as one of my biggest sleepers in the class, Elijah Holyfield. And it wasn't just the 40 time, which was horrendous. He runs a 4.8 twice. Sometimes you get a bad rep that first time around. You're able to make up, a tenth of a second. But no, he was slow both times. He looked super stiff in the receiving drills. This is a guy that I thought played very fast and very shifty. And again, you don't want to completely derail what he shows on tape, but a very big concern with that low 40 time, a running back out of Georgia. So Elijah Holyfield probably going to leave my sleeper list, a guy that I had as a potential Alvin Kamara type of steal in the third round or so. Probably going to push himself into day 3 as well. Maybe even took himself out of the draft because running back's just a pretty deep position every year and not a lot get taken. So if you don't have a lot of elite traits, you could easily get pushed out of the first round. And then the other guy here is Daniel Jones, who, think back like 2 months when he declared. Like the second he declared, he was the number 1 quarterback in the class, and everyone was like, like 2 or 3 people said, "Oh, this guy's quarterback 1," and then everyone starts watching his tape. It's like, wait, why is this guy quarterback 1? His arms average, he's pretty fast, but he's pretty inaccurate. Like he's fine. He's like a Mitch Trubisky kind of, although not quite as fast. And he comes out, he runs a lot slower than I think a lot of people expected. I only saw the 1.475, but I think that's his official time. And then just throwing did not look good. I actually thought the NC State kid, his name's escaping me at the moment, but I think Daniel Jones is falling out of the first round, especially with the way Kyler, who, by the way, I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about Kyler here, but since we're on this topic, I got laughed at, ridiculed, blocked on YouTube because I said 2 months ago, Kyler Murray's playing football. If I'm the Arizona Cardinals, I take him number 1 overall. And then reports come out today, 2 months later, that growing consensus is that Kyler Murray will be the number 1 pick in the NFL draft. He's just the best quarterback in this class. He's insanely accurate. He has a fantastic arm. He has all of the in-pocket presence that I thought Baker Mayfield had. Maybe not quite to the extent, but it's certainly not a problem for Kyler Murray. And then you pair all that with the athleticism. The last comment I will have is that some people who are still doubting Kyler will say that, well, he didn't run today, and he comes in at 207. These people that doubt Kyler thought he was 175 pounds. Well, for one, I don't quite understand that because Oklahoma had him listed at 5'10", 195, very close to what he actually measured in at the combine. So he comes in, he measures 5'10", 207. A lot of players able to put on about 10 pounds in those months before. He actually hadn't even fully committed to football until about 2 weeks ago. So to me, you got no concerns about Kyler physically, whether it's lack of height, lack of weight. I think he's going to be able to play just as fast as he did in college. I think he played at 195. He put on a good 10 pounds of muscle, maybe down a gallon of water. There's another 2 pounds. and he's going to play very fast at the next level, so I'm not worried about that at all. And then 9.5-inch hands. That is above average for an NFL quarterback. So he is not going to have those hands fumbling, and he's going to be able to grip that ball and just absolutely rip it. Hand size, I think, is actually pretty underrated for quarterbacks, just kind of when you think about what having big hands can do for you at that position. So that's a little reaction to the Combine. Obviously going to have a lot to talk about. I'm going to release my mock draft 3.0 on Tuesday as soon as we get all of these drills done and I'm able to wrap my mind around everything that we see. So a lot more to come on the Combine, but that's what we've got. Initial reactions there. So now we're going to move on and have a little fun talking about the top 10 quarterbacks in 2019. Not the top 10 quarterbacks right now, not the top 10 quarterbacks of 2018. This is fast forward a year. The 2019 season's done. Super Bowl champs have been crowned, and you're looking back on whether it's PFF grades or your own personal rankings or Madden ratings, whatever combination of all of that you want to look at. These are basically who I think will be the best quarterbacks in 2019. The guys you're going to kind of plant your flag on and say, wow, they were great this year in 2019. And number one, I will stick, not stick with, I'm actually going to mix this up. A little bit of a surprise here for a lot of people. I'm going to say Patrick Mahomes will still be the best quarterback in 2019. What? You hate Patrick Mahomes, Marcus? People think I hate Patrick Mahomes because I've said he's more Brett Favre than Aaron Rodgers, that I have concerns about his willingness really to just chuck it up into double coverage and sometimes not just take what's there and try to do a little too much. I think it actually cost his team quite a bit against the Patriots, as he took a sack at a field goal range and a play before a screenplay set up either a game tying or a go-ahead touchdown late in the fourth. He just chucked it up into double coverage and was lucky for the Patriots to bump each other and drop that ball. If that happens, we're probably having maybe a little more doubt about Patrick Mahomes. There's no doubt how great he was. But the dude is clearly physically incredible. He is insanely accurate. He's not Cam Newton out here. He was the best deep ball thrower in the NFL last year outside of maybe Russell Wilson. He's mobile, and most importantly here, I think, he's got the best surrounding core in the NFL. And, the Patrick Mahomes versus Drew Brees, who was the MVP? Patrick Mahomes was the MVP, and the people that will stand on the Patrick Mahomes hill, which I agree, Patrick Mahomes was the MVP, but they want to go at it against Drew Brees and say, well, they both had great surrounding cores. Yeah, they did. They both had great play callers, both had really good offensive lines. The Saints was probably a little better. But Patrick Mahomes' weapons were night and day compared to the Saints' weapons. Michael Thomas is a nice player, but he's a chemistry player with Drew Brees, physical player. He creates separation, but it's not elite separation. He's a very good weapon, and then outside of him, they really didn't have anyone. You look at the Chiefs, for one, their play calling was, I think, even better than the Saints. Like, Andy Reid was just out there playing chess while everyone else was playing checkers. But Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, the thing you got to understand, you can't just look at like their Madden grade or whatever. Yeah, Tyreek Hill might not be as well-versed of a receiver as Michael Thomas. But if the Saints called Andy Reid and were like, hey, how about Michael Thomas for Tyreek Hill? The Chiefs would just hang up the phone. Tyreek Hill creates more separation and causes more headaches for defensive coordinators than anyone in the league, and it ain't even freaking close. The deep threat, what he does in the short game as a returner as well, like Tyreek Hill is an absolute weapon paired with Patrick Mahomes' arm. Ball game. Like, you can't stop that. Now, if Tyreek Hill got hurt, Patrick Mahomes, number one on this list, might change. But then you could add Travis Kelce, who's the best receiving tight end in the NFL, certainly creates the most separation. Gronk still blocks very well, still a very nice player in his own right, but Travis Kelce is a top 5 to 10 difference-making offensive player in the NFL. So combine all of those things together, I think Patrick Mahomes will continue to be the best looking quarterback in the NFL next year. Number 2 for me is going to be Aaron Rodgers. Total down year last year. Mind-numbing misses for Aaron Rodgers. But you did see things, especially in the last 2 or 3 games, as he was fully healthy. He got more of that mobility back. Now, he wasn't completely as fast as he once was. Still very elusive. The arm strength didn't go anywhere. There's a throw against Seattle where you can see him throwing flat-footed. It still goes 60, 70 yards. So physically, I have no doubt Rodgers will be there. Now, the question is, can the Packers use this opportunity they have with these draft picks, with this extra cap space, to go out and get him some help? He needs someone outside of Devontae Adams. But I think from a talent perspective, Aaron Rodgers combined with hopefully a more stable situation around him and these young receivers getting another year older, I do think Aaron Rodgers is going to remind people who the best quarterback or how great of a quarterback he is. And then number 3 for me, the same thing, Carson Wentz. The amount of people that have just forgotten about Carson Wentz, it blows my mind. And I get it that Nick Foles came in and played okay and won a Super Bowl. The eye test wasn't even close. And the people that were like, oh, if Carson Wentz is healthy, they're still going to play Nick Foles in the playoffs. Like, yeah, okay. It drives me insane. Carson Wentz was the no doubt MVP of 2017 before the ACL injury. About 10 quarters left to play in that season. Tom Brady ended up winning it. But Carson Wentz, I think, is going to come back with a vengeance here. He knows his team is still very talented. That team is not giving up at all. They just paid Brandon Graham, who I personally thought they weren't going to be able to retain him. But I do think Carson Wentz is going to be back and at the top of his game next year. Playing now with a bit of a chip on his shoulder after a lot of people have said he's not a good leader, said he can't stay healthy. Like, I don't buy any of that. We're a year away from saying Carson Wentz is going to be the best quarterback in the NFL in 5 years. And I think he's going to return to that path in a similar way that Andrew Luck did this year. As pretty much everyone wrote Andrew Luck off, but Carson Wentz doesn't have nearly the same amount of adversity to come back from that Andrew Luck did. So Carson Wentz, number 3 on this list. And then number 4, we're going to stick with this trend here, Jimmy Garoppolo. He was a flag player for me last year, and he started off a little slow, but he was playing in Minnesota against a great, healthy Vikings defense. And then, did he have a week 2 game? I'm trying to think back. I know he played the Chiefs, so I think that might have been week 2. If not, it was week 3. And was finally starting to show like that elite Jimmy Garoppolo that I had been hyping up. And then he dives out of bounds, gets hit in the knee, and he tears his ACL. So you're going to put Jimmy Garoppolo there with Kyle Shanahan, with George Kittle, who is a Travis Kelce type of difference maker. Very similar player. Probably another wide receiver threat, but you're also going to get Dante Pettis in there, who looked very good. Hopefully they can keep Goodwin healthy. We'll see what they get from Pierre Garçon. That offensive line proved to be one of the best in the NFL last year. I think Joe Staley's coming back. So he's going to have a fantastic surrounding core. Jimmy Garoppolo, I think, is going to finally cement himself as an elite top 5 quarterback next year after a bit of a slow start there in San Francisco in his first year as a starter, but not much you can do when you lose an ACL. But, it takes you out for 9 months nowadays, but honestly, in 2019, tearing an ACL, not a whole lot different than like a high ankle sprain in terms of like long-term recovery. Like, it takes a little bit to get back, but once you're back, not a ton of issues unless you've torn 2 or 3 ACLs, then it becomes an issue. But I have no doubt Jimmy Garoppolo will be back and be at the top of his game. I've already said that the 49ers at 45-1, although I'm sure they have climbed up since I made that bet, to win the Super Bowl next year. A fantastic bet, very reminiscent of when I took the Eagles at 66-1 a couple years ago when they did win the Super Bowl. So then, especially with rumors of Kyler Murray going number 1, by the way, that means Mr. Bosa will be playing in San Francisco more likely than not. So then number 5, Tom Brady. Can't rule him out. I did think the deep balls were not there. The arm strength, a little off. At some point, I do wonder if he takes enough hits, is he going to get hurt? But he's still got probably the best offensive line in the NFL right now. They're going to do some things to, play around with, Bill Belichick's a smart general manager. He's the best general manager and head coach in NFL history. He's not dumb. He knows that Tom Brady's not out here slinging balls deep and having this explosive offense. He throws to running backs more than anyone in the league. I think it was like 35% of his targets were to running backs last year. So he's going to continue to try to run the ball, put good weapons around Tom Brady to execute that good short to intermediate passing game where Tom Brady thrives because there's no quarterback that's ever been able to process quick reads as well as Tom Brady. So he's still going to be a total headache for teams. You're still going to have a super hard time defending him, but the reason he doesn't have this top 4 list for me is because I just don't think the full versed game is going to be there for Tom Brady. He's going to be very good if he stays healthy, no doubt. But I do think we've reached a point where we can recognize his greatness, but also recognize that he's not exactly the same player that has made him the best quarterback in the NFL at one point. I just don't think that's him anymore. He's still a top 5 quarterback. I'm not trying to rip on Tom Brady. I just like the upside with the mobility and ability to throw deep in these other quarterbacks. So then number 6, Drew Brees. Kind of the same thing. Should still have a really nice surrounding core. Now, Drew can throw a little more deep than Tom Brady can these days. But Drew's just always been kind of a step up behind Tom Brady. He'll throw that costly interception, or he'll, miss I'm not going to say he'll miss a throw. It's mostly just he'll throw a costly interception like we saw exactly in that game against the Rams in overtime. Really dumb decision. He just chucked it up, about to get blasted, and it lost his team the game. But Drew Brees is still a fantastic player. Number 7, Russell Wilson, reminded us of his greatness this year. Definitely finished the year as a top 5 quarterback. And, I think just because I'm moving Wentz and Jimmy Garoppolo back up above Russell Wilson, he's just going to naturally slide down. But I still think very highly of Russell Wilson. The number 8 is going to be a bit of a surprise here, but I will put Matt Ryan here. I'm not the biggest Matt Ryan guy just because he really seems to let his team down when his team needs him. But he is very efficient. He's really good at executing that offense. It's going to be a really good football team next year at Atlanta. And I just think Matt Ryan is going to produce. He'll be in that conversation for MVP because he's probably going to throw for like 4,500 yards, like 34 touchdowns. He doesn't throw a ton of picks, so, he's just going to have a really solid season. Probably a little closer, I think, to a couple years ago when he did win MVP. So I'll put Matt Ryan there at number 8 just because of kind of the production. And I'm always a guy that says you can't just rank a guy high because of stats. But there is also something to be said about Matt Ryan. I think I'm really hard on Matt Ryan. I'll give him a little credit here. Say I think he's going to have a good year. I don't think he's a terrible quarterback. I don't think he's a game-wrecking elite guy. I also think paying him the money he makes is a bit of a stretch considering his track record of not producing late in games, but I will give him some credit. I think he'll produce like a top 10 quarterback next year. And then number 9, Phillip Rivers, has his flaws, has his gimmicks, his quirks, but I love Phillip Rivers. And this team, it's going to be a good football team again. He's going to have Keenan Allen, Hunter Henry back. Melvin Gordon's not going anywhere. Hopefully they can make that offensive line even better. And that defense better. The Chargers, especially if they can play in a home field in the new Rams Stadium and get some more fans there, I think the Chargers are going to have a similar year to what they had this year as one of the most talented teams in the league. They still just got to figure out how to win and sometimes play a little more physical like we saw against New England. But I'll keep Phillip Rivers in the top 10 here. And then number 10, I thought about a lot of names here. I thought about Deshaun Watson, who really impressed me last year. He would come in here in the top 12. I do think Deshaun Watson is very worthy of this top 10 ranking. If especially Breeze or Brady just fall off a cliff, I think Watson might be the first guy into that top 10 conversation. Big Ben is another guy, but I think with Antonio Brown gone, with how that team it's just going right now, I think Big Ben is going to start his kind of end of his career path here. I honestly thought about Kyler Murray because I think he is going to be an absolute game-breaking player at the next level. I continue to rise him every time I watch his tape. But I am going to go with Baker Mayfield here, number 10. He's going to have one of the 5 best offensive lines in the NFL. They just signed Greg Robinson to a 1-year, $9 million deal. We'll see how that holds up. Kind of seems like the guy that now that he got his money might take a step back again, considering he's played on like a third of every team in the NFL. But Cleveland's got a special thing going here. Baker's a big part of it. I don't want to doubt him anymore because he's proved me wrong time and time again. I'm excited. I'm not going to say that I don't think he can do it because he's got the arm talent now. He's proved that he is a more than aware quarterback, good at everything you look for. I just want to see him go from the level he was at right now, which was a very efficient short to intermediate passer, and then he hit some deep throws this year. He absolutely did accurately. But that was my concern for him coming out. How consistent can he be moving the ball downfield? And I'm not going to say he's got a limited ceiling because I'm done saying that with Baker Mayfield. I've already said that I was wrong about him and his upside. But I am excited to see him try to turn this into an explosive elite offense. I think I set that up pretty well. So I do think Baker Mayfield is going to have a fantastic season. I'm buying into Cleveland. I'm trying to put the worst pick in NFL history thing behind me because I went to a Browns game this year. The Browns fans are so fun. Baker was so fun to watch. And I know I'm jumping on the bandwagon, but hell, I don't care. This is going to be a fun team to watch, and I think Baker Mayfield has a very good chance to enter this top 10 list by the end of next year. So those are my top 10 quarterbacks for 2019. Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, Wentz, Jimmy Garoppolo, Tom Brady, Drew Brees, Russell Wilson, Matt Ryan, Phillip Rivers, and the one and only Baker Mayfield. Woke up feeling dangerous. In that order. So let's now move on. Fix the AFC West. Let's start with those Chargers who we just talked about. We kind of mentioned this already. This team needs to get more physical and block better on the offensive line as well. They also need Phillip Rivers to stay good at his age. You cannot afford more regression from him physically because he already gets away with enough as a well below average quarterback. But if he loses a little more arm strength, if he can't move even more than he can't right now, you're going to be in trouble because he's able to do just enough to the point where he's about to get hit and he can get the ball to Keenan Allen on third down. But it's very close. If he loses half a step or if his arm talent, drops off even more, this team would all of a sudden be in a lot of trouble. Your mind can only take you so far like we saw with Peyton Manning. And especially with Phillip Rivers' kind of willingness to just kind of chuck it up there. But I think they'll be able to maintain that. So this team's losing some pieces on their worst position on the team. It's an absolutely loaded roster. There's not a lot of work to do here, to be honest, other than just get healthy. But they're losing Corey Liuget, Brandon Mebane, Darius Philon, and Damian Square. Those are their top 4 interior defensive linemen. Now, it might not be the worst thing that you're losing these guys because you're paying Corey Liuget $5.5 million. You were paying Brandon Mebane $4.5 million, and then you were also paying Damian Square $2 million. So you're clearing up $11 million there to get rid of 3 guys that did not play well last year. I think getting rid of that Corey Liuget contract is a big deal for this team, but they got to do something to replace that. So is that drafting the Clemson kid in the first round to get an instant spark at that D tackle position? Or is it going to free agency, using some of that money to sign an Ndamukong Suh? Does Suh want to stay in L.A.? Do you sign a Sheldon Richardson? The beautiful thing for the Chargers is their biggest need, which is interior defensive linemen, is the deepest position in free agency. So even if you don't go for those top guys, there's guys like Steve McClendon, Danny Shelton, Margus Hunt, Jonathan Hankins, Al Woods, Derek Shelby, Kyle Love, Jordan Phillips, Brent Urban, Henry Anderson, Shelby Harris, Jihad Ward, Tyler Davison. A lot of really good players on the interior that they'll be able to sign, hopefully be able to do it for cheap. This is a team that has shown a really good ability to get some good free agent contracts. So I do think they will definitely sign somebody on the interior in free agency, and then they'll probably draft someone pretty early as well. Now, another big free agent here is Denzel Perriman. They have some linebackers here, but that is another weakness for them, and I do think they'll let Perriman go. He has not been able to stay healthy, and they just need more consistency at that position in terms of health. Now, you're probably not getting that in free agency. Linebacker's much thinner, but does this team go out and draft a physical presence like a Trey Lamar at linebacker, or a Mac Wilson or something like that early in the first, or maybe they wait till the second? They definitely need defensive tackle, linebacker. You draft linemen, probably a couple guys in the third, fourth, fifth round. Hopefully you can hit on an interior guy. Maybe they can finally get something from Forrest Lamp. This team should be in pretty good shape. And now that I look at those D tackles that are leaving, they should really have some cap space to play around with here, despite the fact that their roster is absolutely loaded. The other thing is Trevor Williams set to be a free agent. He's actually a restricted, so they're going to have first rights to him. He's a really nice player, but they do have a lot of depth at corner. Jason Verrett set to leave as well. I think they'll let Verrett go. I think you got to do everything you can probably to get Trevor Williams back. Everyone else you're probably going to let go here. So those are the Chargers. I think they'll be back, like I just kind of mentioned. But they'll have a pretty good offseason because this front office has been arguably the best in the NFL over the last 2 years in terms of drafting and doing free agency. So then we've got the Denver Broncos, and this team has a lot more work to do than the Chargers. They need offensive linemen. They need a quarterback. God, they need a quarterback. Why did they do that? Why did you bring in Joe Flacco? He's not even better than Case Keenum. Honestly, they probably need another running back. I love Phillip Lindsay, but I do have longevity questions with him in terms of can he repeat at that size and can he stay healthy at that size. Really never was a Devonta Freeman or their Freeman, the running back, not Devonta. Was never a fan of him. I think they need a running back. Wide receiver, you probably let these guys play out. I like the guys they drafted. Hopefully they can get Emmanuel Sanders back in there. And then you've got a ton of tight ends here because you got Jake Butt, who started to play well at the end of last year. The Fumagalli, the one-fingered stud out of Wisconsin. So you've got some playmakers, but you need offensive linemen. You're going to lose your best one, Matt Paradise. And then on defense, they have all the makings for a great defense. You get Vic Fangio in there. Obviously, Von Miller, Bradley Chubb. You're going to be able to really package a good pass rush there. They need better guys in the secondary though, that can cover. Chris Harris isn't going anywhere, but Bradley Roby is. The guy they drafted, name's escaping me right now, Yeadham. Isaac Yeadham. He did not have the best year. You need someone that can cover. Probably not getting that in free agency, honestly. It's just not. People just aren't letting corners go. Maybe you sign Morris Claiborne as a Band-Aid, but that's not really going to help a whole lot. I've mocked corner to the Broncos at number 10 in at least one of my mocks, whether that's Greedy Williams or Byron Murphy. Really excited to see these guys run on Monday. Byron Murphy is a guy that I think could surprise some people with 4.3 speed. So I do think that'd be a great fit. Greedy Williams would fit right in here. He's kind of a Chris Harris, a Aqib Talib replacement. So corner, I think, is the number one need on this team along with offensive line. And I think you got to go through the draft to address those. So John Elway going to have to put that scouting hat on and figure out how to have a good draft here because they desperately need it. Unfortunately for this team, offensive line and corner is not where the talent in this free agency class is. Those are just harder positions to find. So you've got to actually figure it out at those positions. And honestly, I would try to get Matt Paradise back. I would maybe even franchise tag him if you think you have the cap space to do it. Though you just ate a bunch of cap to bring in Joe Flacco. So, I mean, God, like, why? Why would you do that? Isn't it a $10 million penalty? Isn't that exactly what it would cost you to franchise tag Matt Paradise? Wouldn't you rather have Case Keenum and Matt Paradise than Joe Flacco? I just don't get it. I just don't. So they're going to try to figure things out. It's going to come down to the draft. They have to hit on rookies because free agency is not going to be a total solution for this Broncos team. Now, they should be competitive. They should be one of the best defenses in the NFL. But if they can't hit on linemen and have a serviceable offense, because God knows Joe Flacco is not going to step in there getting pressured every other play and turn this into even a top or a bottom, anything better than a bottom 5 offense. Now, if you could hit on like Greedy Williams, and all of a sudden this returns to being that elite top 3 defense that it was when they won the Super Bowl, you could maybe sneak into the playoffs and make things interesting, almost like the Bears did last year. But you really got to hit in the draft. In reality, I think it's a 6-7 win team that gets stuck in purgatory again next year and is trying to maybe trade up for one of these top quarterbacks. They're in a weird place right now. They're really trying to milk this window out that frankly may have passed. So if they don't hit it this year, do you think about trading Von Miller and try to blow this thing up? Like maybe they move their 11th pick and Von Miller next year to go up to number 1 or 2, you know, and go get Jake Fromm or get Jacob Eason or whoever it may be. I don't think it's Tua myself, but some people do. Yeah, so that's Denver. Let's move on to Kansas City. A team that has a lot more hope, but a lot of work to do themselves. Now, with Andy Reid, with Patrick Mahomes, with Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, you're going to have an elite offense. You got good linemen as well. Mitch Morse is set to be a free agent. I think they're going to try and get him back. He's been a good player for them when healthy. They would love for him to stay healthy. But offensively, you should be pretty fine. Some people think they're going to sign Le'Veon Bell. No, that's not happening. I think Damian Williams is a great running back for them. And they're going to just kind of bring him in there, bring him back, I would think, unless some team offers him a bunch of money, but I don't really think that's going to happen. But we've really seen that they can plug anyone into this system and they'll produce at running back. For the defense, though, oh my God, they have so much work to do. You love Chris Jones up front. You should be able to bring in someone like an Adolphus Washington or a Brett Urban. And in a nickel-based defense, you put him next to Chris Jones, and you should be fine on the interior. That's pretty easy to fix. Edge, kind of a concern. D Ford's going to get the franchise tag. They're going to keep him around. They're currently shopping Justin Houston. I think they might end up cutting Justin Houston because I don't think anyone's going to trade for that contract he's on right now. It's like $16 million or something. You know, unless it's like the 49ers and they strike out in free agency and just decide, you know what, we'll eat his contract for a couple years. We got a ton of cap space. Who cares? We're ready to win. That's really the only team. Maybe the Colts would be another team, but I don't know why the Chiefs would trade Justin Houston to the Colts, who's going to be possibly their biggest competitor in the AFC. So there's a couple teams there that might do it. But, you know, I think you got to get that contract off the books with Justin Houston. So do you use that money to sign a guy? Probably not, because they're going to be expensive. Maybe a guy like Shaquille Barrett slips through the margins and you're able to get him for like $8 or $9 million a year. You know, the pass rush should be okay with Chris Jones and D Ford. And then you've also drafted a couple guys in the second round the last couple of years. I didn't love those guys they took, and they haven't really shown anything, but maybe they can develop them. And then you look to the secondary, which is a huge, huge need. Now, this team, again, is not going to benefit from free agency this year, is weak at corner. You know, maybe, I don't think they can afford Bradley Roby, but Rashawn Melvin, EJ Gaines, Darquez Denard. Maybe they'd take a chance on Jason Verrett, like Eric Rowe or Trevor Williams from their own division. You could get a number 2 corner, but you're not getting a number 1 corner in free agency, which this team really needs. So maybe they can hit that in the draft. Maybe they get lucky and Byron Murphy falls to them. Maybe you take a guy like Julian Love or, Aluwajuawe or whatever his name is at Penn State. I do think this team goes corner in the first round. There's some good players there in that 1 to 2 range where they're going to be picking. They got to hit on that player, though. And then a big wild card is at safety. What do? A lot of people think they might sign Earl Thomas. I wouldn't be surprised. The rumor is Earl Thomas is not going to be taking any sort of discount to play for a championship. He's already got 1. Or does he have 2? I think he's just got... What am I thinking? He's got... The Seahawks win 1 or 2? I think it's just 1, right? They would have had 2 if they gave it to Marshawn, correct? But yeah, so Earl Thomas isn't taking a discount. I don't know if the Chiefs can afford Earl Thomas. Maybe they can afford like Clinton Dix, or who else is going to be out there? Like Trey Boston, Adrian Phillips, like a B-level guy. I think Clinton Dix is actually a B-level guy who's going to cost you closer to an A. I think that's more realistic for the Chiefs is that they pay a B-level safety to just kind of shore things up a little bit. I don't think this team can really afford to give Earl Thomas $13 million or whatever he's going to get. So you got to draft well, again, for the Chiefs. If you need secondary help and you need offensive line help, you really just got to draft well. And I can't tell you with any certainty who's going to pan out. I've got my draft board and everything, and I can tell you who I would take. But it's going to be up to these guys to draft well if they want to make this defense just serviceable. That's all it's got to be. Because this offense is going to be fantastic. But they definitely need this defense to be a little better than it was last year. They're not that far away, but they got a lot of work to do. And obviously a team that's going to have Super Bowl expectations next year. Now we got the Oakland Raiders. And we just saved the biggest headache for last. The worst trade in my lifetime. They get rid of Khalil Mack for a first-round pick that turns into the 24th pick in this draft. Sweet. You now have gaping holes at every position on this team. Every single position. They need a quarterback. Derek Carr's not the answer. They need running backs. They need offensive linemen. They have a tight end, Jared Cook, but he's a free agent. They traded their only receiver away. They have the worst receiving core in the NFL. You would think you've got a left tackle in Colton Miller, but he did not play well. So he's got to be better. So the entire offense, you need a new player. Defensively, interior defensive line, you got some promising players, but you'd love to get a true star there. Edge, they got nobody. Linebacker, absolutely nobody. Probably the worst linebacking core in the NFL. Corner, Gary Conley's a nice player, probably the best player on this team, actually. Rashawn Melvin's a free agent. You bring him back, maybe. Safety, really nobody. Carl Davis is fine. He's an average starting safety. That's not his name, is it? Carl Davis? Carl Joseph, my bad. So yeah, you can really go any direction for the Raiders. Free agency, this is what's weird. Can you really justify paying Le'Veon Bell $15 million when you supposedly couldn't pay Khalil Mack? That's what you're going to have a hard time selling to the fans, is you can either continue to fill this roster out with intermediate players that you frankly got to overpay because they're free agents, which it's just the nature of the business. You got to overpay for free agents, whether they're good or bad. But if you give a guy the Brinks truck, say you give, Le'Veon Bell a bunch of money, or you give Golden Tate $14 million, how do you justify that when you traded away Khalil Mack and Amari Cooper? You just have to build through the draft. You just have to. Because otherwise none of this makes any sense. It's basically going back on your strategy, which was to just collect as many picks as possible and hit in the draft. And the thing is, when you sign a Golden Tate, when you sign a Roger Saffold or Ndamukong Suh, when you're a team like Oakland, that's just less reps that you're able to give a young player and less development as a team that you're able to have. So everything's just broken here, and it's so hard to fix, but frankly, you just have to take the best player available at every single pick and hope to God that Mike Mayock is right. I think he's a good scout. He's a good hire. I think Mayock should give this team some hope. And, we'll have my mock draft, like I said, on Tuesday, so we'll talk a little more about what picks I think they should do. There's going to be buzz now for them to take DK Metcalf at number 4. I think that would be a mistake. There's still risk there with DK Metcalf. I think the Raiders they have to get a blue-chip player with that 4th pick, or you trade down. But whether that's Quinnen Williams or Ed Oliver, I don't think Bosa will be there, or you trade up and get Kyler Murray. But you have to get a blue-chip player if you're the Raiders, period. And then, best player available with those 24 and 27, whether it's a corner, a D-tackle, edge guy. I do think a good pick for them would be Jeffrey Simmons if he's there, because this team's not going to be any good next year. Jeffrey Simmons, a top 10 player in this class, and you get him back next year as just essentially a long-term investment, which is all this team needs. So they're not going to be any good next year. Really all you can hope for if you're a Raiders fan is that, A, they somehow don't leave your city. Like I said, when they traded Khalil Mack, I would have just, copped a Jimmy Garoppolo jersey and made the switch then. But if you're still there, just hope your team can draft well. It's really the only hope. Otherwise, this is going to be a colossal disaster. So that's fixing the AFC West. We tried to fix everyone. A little disjointed. But let's get into the mailbag here. Thank you to everyone on Twitter who did send in messages. I'm just firing this thing up. Reminder to follow me on Twitter at TFG_football, where you can get these questions in. 1 second here. I'm just pulling this up. Okay. Mailbag for the Fully Inflated podcast. Here we go. Who do you think, this is from Tim Holstad, who do you think trades up with the Cardinals for the first pick, and what kind of haul do you think they get for it? I actually responded to this. I said, nobody. Cards are going Murray, and I firmly believe that the Cardinals are going to take Kyler Murray first overall. But I'll cater to your question. What would they get for it? The two teams you look at are Jacksonville and the Giants. I believe both have their first and second picks. I think you would get, or Oakland, really any of those. I think all three are going to be making calls to go up and get Kyler Murray, who is going to be the number 1 pick in the draft. I've been saying it since January 2nd or whatever. I still believe it. I think all he's done is risen his stock since then. But I think you would get, your typical draft capital for that move, which would be the first round from either Oakland, Jacksonville, or the Giants, which are all top 6 picks. You'd get their second rounder and probably their first rounder next year. And then maybe there's, you pick up a 4th and you give them a 5th or, some other pieces moving around. But that's the gist of it. Your first and second and then a first next year is probably what that pick is worth. Now, I'm going to pose a counter question here. What's Josh Rosen worth? Which might be a question in this thing. I think he's worth a first. Personally, I've said if I was the Giants, I would take Josh Rosen over, hoping Dwayne Haskins is there, or you trade up for Dwayne Haskins. And a lot of Giants fans are all like, "Oh, we don't need a quarterback. We'll take one next year when Tua and Eason and Fromm are there." It doesn't work like that. You took Saquon Barkley, who's the best running back in the NFL. You got Odell Beckham. You got a front office who's ready to win, clearly, because they're not taking a quarterback this year either, apparently. you're not going to win 2 games. You're going to win 7 or 8. You're going to miss the playoffs. You're going to have the 12th pick. How are you going to take a top 3 quarterback? Those guys are all going top 5 next year. You realize that, right? So you're sitting here at 6. You already screwed up last year. I love Saquon Barkley. I said he was the best running back in the NFL week 2. It doesn't matter. You don't have a quarterback. So get Josh Rosen, who's way better than Dwayne Haskins. I'm sorry. Haskins is a fine player. He doesn't really have a comp, but he's really good in the short to intermediate game. He misses some throws that I'd like to see him make. He's probably a more likable dude right now, but Josh Rosen could easily come into New York where he wanted to play all along in a fresh start, playing with Saquon Barkley and Odell Beckham, and be a damn good quarterback. Everything Eli Manning was in his career and more. So go get him. Why would you dance around this thing? Your second round pick's not going to do it because the Patriots, the Chargers, the Steelers, they'd give up their first round pick for Josh Rosen. They just would. So from my chair, I just got this nice new Maxnomic Racing Gamer chair. From that chair, I'm moving up. Or I'm sending the Cardinals my 6th pick for Josh Rosen. I get that Josh Rosen was the 10th pick last year and he sucked. Well, any quarterback would have sucked in Arizona last year. And that was the best quarterback class maybe in NFL history. At least in the last decade. Yeah, Josh Rosen was the 10th pick. He was the 4th quarterback in that class. He'd be the 2nd in this one. So get your man. And he's got a year of NFL experience under his belt. Yeah, he didn't produce. Did you watch a Cardinals game? They couldn't block anyone. Larry Fitzgerald can't get open. They don't have anyone else. They don't have a tight end. Of course he sucked. So Josh Rosen, I think, could come into New York and be great. I've had that rant before, but it just... This hatred for Josh Rosen and this... Don't want to call anyone idiots, but this crazy idea that the Giants are just going to magically get one of the top 3 quarterbacks in next year's class, it doesn't work that way. So let's move on to the next question. What wide receiver raised their stock the most in the combine? We talked about that. Paris Campbell and DK Metcalf, I think, raised it more than Paris Campbell, but they both certainly helped themselves. Do I think Bosa would be able to transition into a 3-4 edge linebacker role? Yeah, he's very athletic. Most edge guys you can play in any scheme. The Broncos played Bradley Chubb as a 3-4 outside linebacker. It's the same thing. And if they really struggle as a stand-up guy, it's not a whole lot different to just run like a 3-3-5 is kind of what it would be called. But one of those second threes, the linebackers, are just an edge outside linebacker. So, if the Cardinals take him and they want to have Chandler Jones as a stand-up off-ball or a stand-up edge guy on the other side, you can have Nick Bosa put his hand down on the other side, and it's effectively the same. It doesn't really matter. Now, there's certain guys that I think are better in certain spots, like Josh Allen. He could absolutely be a very effective 4-3 defensive end, a 4-3 edge defensive end. Now, his strongest ability is his ability to come off in a zone blitz and drop into coverage and show off that range as a cover guy and his versatility. So you're in certain schemes like Green Bay and Pittsburgh, where they dropped their edge guys into coverage more than any teams in the NFL, they're going to have more value for a Josh Allen. I think looking at it, I think more often than not, it's the guys that can play off ball have that certain benefit for 3-4 teams as opposed to 4-3. And this is kind of why I say run a 4-3. You can take any edge guy and play him at a 4-3 defensive end. It's a lot easier to find the personnel. Also, the outside linebackers in a 4-3 are easier to find. Whereas in the 3-4 scheme, they look for bigger middle linebackers. The 4-3 doesn't care quite as much. So I think the personnel is a lot easier to find in a 4-3. because you can take any edge guy and play him. Whereas the 3-4 teams are looking for maybe quicker guys that are a little rarer. They exist every year, but they might be gone by the time you got to pick. Who's my top tight end in this year's draft? Well, that question just became a lot harder today. It's one of the two Iowa guys, Fant or Hawkinson. Now, Hawkinson is the more complete tight end. He blocks, probably a little more refined as far as his ability to attack the football, use his body to get open. I would probably still say Hawkinson. Now, some people are like, oh, he ran so slow. Well, actually, I had him projected as a 4.7, 140. That's exactly what he ran. He's not a burner. He's a very athletic tight end. He excels in other areas, kind of like Gronk. Now, Noah Fant could be that Jordan Reed, that Travis Kelce, that George Kittle type where he's fast and it's just a mismatch nightmare. So both those guys, I think, are the best two tight ends since O.J. Howard, certainly. It's going to come down to what you're really looking for and kind of team fit. So if you want a guy that can block, you're going to take Hawkinson. If you want a more well-rounded guy, you're going to take Hawkinson. If you want a versatile piece that can go out and play slot wide receiver, can come in and Hawkinson can do those things too, but Fant's going to be a total mismatch problem. You know, he ran a faster 40 than a lot of the best wide receivers in the NFL today. So it's one of those two. It's a personal preference thing. I think more teams are going to value Hawkinson because he blocks. He's a little bigger, more traditional. But Fant is another great player. They both I think cemented themselves in the first round today. Who's wowed me the most at the combine? Noah Fant was up there. DK Metcalf, obviously. Miles, I mean, we kind of talked about that. Miles Sanders really impressed me. Another guy to keep an eye on is the other Georgia guy, Mecole Hardman. And I've said that those Georgia guys are undervalued because they didn't produce. But they had a lot of guys to split that rock, and they ran the ball a lot. So that's why I like Riley Ridley a lot. And Mecole Hardman's going to be a good player too, if nothing else, just as a great kick returner. But he's got a lot of upside to be a good starting slot guy at least. Who do I think the Dallas Cowboys should target in the drafts? They don't have their first, so you're talking about a second-round pick. The first guy that came to my mind for them is Taylor Rapp. Versatile safety out of Washington. Some people think he's a first-round pick. I think he falls just because he doesn't have any truly elite traits. Yeah, I think safety, interior line. You could be able to find someone in the second round. They definitely need another running back. Zeke's a great player, but they need someone to carry some of that load, and this is a really good deep class. So, third, fourth round, you could be looking at a guy maybe like Miles Sanders. But they're pretty set. I would also take a quarterback too in like the fourth round or something, just to kind of not necessarily put pressure on Dak, but you don't know if you're going to re-sign Dak. They probably will, but they could use a little more talent in that quarterback room. I think this NC State kid, I keep forgetting his name, but I think he's going to be a really nice backup with some upside. He's a guy that I think the Patriots might have their eye on in the second round. This guy's asking about Josh Rosen. Can they get a first rounder back? We won't talk about that again. What are the priorities of the Patriots this offseason? Keeping Flowers or Trent Brown, acquiring OBJ via trade, or drafting a wide receiver, O-line, or DN? What are your opinions? I got opinions about the Patriots. I don't think they'll keep Trey Flowers. Trey Flowers is a really good player, but he's going to demand A player money. He's a B+ player. Bill Belichick does not overpay players. That is what makes him great. He doesn't emotionally attach himself to players. He fills out his roster with middling contracts of players that can outperform their contract based on his scheme fit within what he knows. It is the definition of what makes Bill Belichick so great. Now, Trey Flowers is a fantastic fit for him, but I don't know if he's a fit for them at $21 million a year. It's the same reason they let Chandler Jones go. And his scheme itself doesn't value pass rush too much, because pass rush is how you create an elite defense, a championship defense. Well, he's got Tom Brady. He doesn't need championship defense. He needs smart defense, bend don't break defense. And paying one player, an eighth of the cap on the defensive side of the ball, especially when that player is Trey Flowers, who can only show that elite stuff 2 or 3 times a game, I don't think you keep him. Trent Brown, he's going to get absolutely paid. He's gone. Both those guys are gone, I think, for the Patriots. And you're not getting OBJ via trade. It's just not happening. That said, they can have a really good draft. They have so many picks. They have, I think, a first, 2 seconds, 3 thirds. So you're going to be able to get a wide receiver in there somewhere. I think you could take like a Mecole Hardman in the second round, another speedy guy. I'm pretty sure Philip Dorsett is gone. Offensive line, they're pretty set. They're going to use one of those picks on a quarterback, whether it's Will Grier in the first, or the NC State guy in the second, or Daniel Jones in the second. Whoever it may be, they're going to draft a quarterback because they need to. And then, they'll probably draft an edge guy to replace Trey Flowers. But what Bill Belichick will probably do is he'll sign like Derek Morgan or Clay Matthews or William Hayes, someone like that, Terrell Suggs. He'll sign some veteran and just replace Trey Flowers for a quarter of the cost, because that's what Bill Belichick does. Who are a few players you are surprised are still in the NFL? That's a tough question to come up on the fly. I mean, Frank Gore, that guy is just a legend. AP, I'm surprised he has stuck around after, I think after the Cardinals specifically. He played fine for the Cardinals, but I kind of thought that was going to be it. One last little hoorah. Played pretty well. But he played well for Washington. Like, he could be good again. If I'm the Vikings, I'd give AP a call, honestly, because they need that backup. And he could maybe teach some toughness to Dalvin Cook. It's mostly just running backs. I mean, Larry Fitzgerald, I'm surprised the Cardinals keep extending him, honestly. I don't think he's necessarily helping that team a ton. He's a great leader in the locker room, but on the field, he just doesn't create a lot of separation. I think when you're kind of growing a young receiver to just kind of learn to sort of force balls in there to your slot receiver who catches everything, but that's just not necessarily good habits to teach your quarterback to throw into tight windows so often. And they got a young player in Christian Kirk that should be starting in the slot that's not because of Larry Fitzgerald. Who else? The Terrence Newman retired recently, but he was such a surprise that he kept going. Jason Witten, he's back. Never thought that would happen. Do I think the NFC East will be more competitive, less competitive, or equal to last year? Who will come out on top this year? Yeah, I think the Giants will be better because I don't think they'll do any of the things I described. I think they'll take a Jonah Williams or a Quinnen Williams or whoever it is at 6 and will improve their team. Eli can't be any worse than he was last year. Odell battled some injuries, if I'm not mistaken. It should be fine. The Eagles are going to be much better than they were last year just because Carson Wentz should be fully healthy. The Cowboys were kind of average to start the year, and then I think the Cowboys will be very legit next year. The only flip side is Washington's going to suck. More than this year, though. It was a pretty competitive division last year. I'm going to go with the same Because I think Washington is going to, like, if they were 8 total teams, the 4 teams from last year, the 4 teams from this year, next year's version of Washington I think will be the worst of the 8. And then you take the 2 Giants teams, 7 and 6. I'd say it's about the same. And I would not bet against the Eagles. I think the Cowboys are going to be really good. It's going to be between those 2, I think. What else do we have here? Where do I think Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell land? Well, Le'Veon, for me, the New York Jets, it's like the only spot that seems to make any sense for me. Now, how often do the top free agents actually go where it makes sense? Not very often, but I think he'd be a great piece for Sam Darnold, who frankly could develop some better habits to like check the ball down a little more. I'm a big Sam Darnold guy. I think that would be an incredible weapon, and you take some pressure off him in the run game a little bit. And they got just so much cap space. So the Jets just make a ton of sense, frankly, for both Antonio and Le'Veon Bell. I thought the 49ers were a no-doubt landing spot for Antonio Brown, but they have no interest, apparently. Now, the longer he sits there, that could change. Washington apparently wants Antonio Brown. Why? I don't know. Who else was on that list that said they wanted him? I can't even remember. The Titans. I could see the Titans, frankly. It's got to be someone that Pittsburgh's comfortable trading him to, because they don't want to see him kill it for New England or any of that. But the other thing with trading for Antonio is you're trading for that contract, which is a lot of money, and he's probably going to ask for another one at 30, 31 years old. That's a lot of money to give for a player that's going to start regressing, that has frankly had some injury concerns over the last couple of years. Your guess is as good as mine on Antonio. I think the Steelers are going to hold on to him until someone gives them a top 40 pick. So whoever it is that's willing to give that top 40 pick for him is probably going to end up getting him. What do I think about that kid from Baylor who's coming back to football? Gonna have to be more specific on that one, Justin. I'm not sure what you're saying there, who you're referring to. So that is gonna do it. This is probably just gonna be up on YouTube. Still have not made any progress on getting this on anything other than Spotify. So if you made it this far, you clearly didn't hate it. So you might as well hit that like button. It really helps me out spread this podcast and all that. So cheers as always, everyone. Peace out, and we will see you later. Enjoy the rest of the combine.